All right, guys, the day has finally come. The body is off the cart. So yesterday I had some help, so I put them to work, and we have the body back on the chassis for the first time in quite a long time. I have gone through and I've wet sanded the entire body inside and out. I've given it a good polish. It still needs a coat of wax and final finishing, but overall for a beat up old body, I think it looks pretty good. I did all the inside panels too, so they've got a little bit of shine on them. Obviously not perfect. Our repair back here and the paint blending came out pretty good. There's some areas that you can kind of see the transition between the old paint and the new paint. But considering how faded, chipped up, cracked, and broken this body was, I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. My next step here is I need to get this bolted down. Right now it's just sitting on top of the chassis. I've got a roll or multiple rolls of this foam. It's like closed cell foam rubber that will compress down pretty flat. That is going to go all the way around the outside perimeter of the body, similar to what it was like when I pulled it apart. I figured that was it. It worked for all those years, and it seems like a good idea to kind of, maybe it won't squeak as bad because these, fiberglass bodies on a steel pan, often they squeak when there's nothing between it. Not a lot of bolts going around, so I just got back from the hardware store picking up bolts, and that is where we're at. I'm pretty excited. Everything seems to look pretty good. I've got a little bit of work still, with polishing the rest of the body. I've got a pinstripe that is missing here where we repainted this section of the fender that I need to try to figure out how to put back on there and still hopefully have it have, this kind of a look where it's just slightly missing in gaps just so that it matches a little bit better. But boy, am I excited. So let's get after this thing. All right, so I've got the body pulled up off the pan a couple inches here. This is the bottom edge here. I don't know if you can see these holes, but this is the bottom edge. There's a lot going on because you got a side pod with a lip. This rounds. This is actually the bottom of the body. And I've got my foam here. It should be the right size. The foam has a self-adhesive side to it here. I'm going to stick that to the body, and then on the pan itself, it's just going to be the foam between the two. And with any luck, this will actually pinch down to where I need it to. It's pretty rigid stuff because it's closed cell, and I wanted closed cell because it doesn't absorb moisture, or at least as bad as like an open cell would. And I obviously don't want to get moisture trapped between here. This pan's coated, so it probably isn't, hopefully it's not going to get through the coating anyway, any moisture, but we'll see. So I think I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to start running this along the bottom edge of the body and see if I can get it to stick on. And I think we will, hopefully it'll just work, but we'll find out here in a second. All right, so that seemed to stick pretty good. So I think that's a good plan. And like I said, hopefully this collapses well enough that, when I pinch the bolt down, this will fill any voids that are in there, but it'll flatten down to say like 1/8 of an inch is the idea with this one. I'm gonna reposition and get up around the front corner, and I'll bring you back before we start bolting anything down. All right, so I got the body set back down on the foam. I believe that it's roughly in position. Obviously, now that there's foam on between the two halves, the body and the pan, I can't see straight through the hole, so I've got to pick. And what I'd like to do is see if I can get, so that went through. I'd like to see if I can get a bolt through each of the four corners and then kind of give the body a wiggle to make sure that like everything is exactly where it's supposed to be and we're straight. I may take some measurements and try to see if I'm square on the frame a little bit. It's kind of a hard thing to figure out. So this seems like a good spot here. And we're just a hair back. So pull this. I'm gonna try, I have the camera positioned on the on the back of the body, so hopefully I'm not wiggling it around too much. Good. So that's in. And I'm just going to do that on all four corners to try to get this lined up the best I can. Because we didn't change any holes in the body. We didn't change any holes in the floor pan. So these holes should go right back through to where the car was originally positioned. This one's a little back too. There we go. All right, there we go. We got 4 bolts in, and really they're just acting as a pin to kind of hold it in place. They are long enough I could get a nut on the bottom, so that's good. And it's obviously going to pinch down quite a bit, but I think that's pretty good. Let me get you out of there. All right, get you off there. We're going to give this thing the truffle shuffle and see if we can get it to kind of sit in where it's supposed to be. It feels pretty good now. I'm hoping this foam collapses the way I hope it does, and it isn't too fat, but we'll find out. It does seem... Seems like everything's where it's supposed to be. All right, yeah, it seems pretty good. I don't feel it moving around too much. Basically what I'm looking for is inside of the edge of the body, it actually has a lip that drops down and comes over the inside of the pan. I just want to make sure that that lip is lined up all the way around even. I'm going to take a couple of quick measurements here just to make sure, and then we'll start getting the rest of the bolts in, and maybe we can actually tighten something up too. All right. I've got all my hardware laid out here, and I'm going to start bolting this stuff down. So I've got original Volkswagen pan washers, I guess they are. They're like a reinforcing washer. I've sandblasted them. I gave them a quick black paint job. These go on the bottom side, and they basically just have like this lip on either side. And typically, I mean, they're on every Beetle out there. This is basically just gonna give a little more structure to the pan. I mean, it's a fiberglass body, so you've got less structure up top anyway. So I'm gonna try to use those everywhere I can. Some of the holes in this body were drilled through the body and through the pan in a non-factory Volkswagen location. I think my plan for that is I'm gonna get these all set up. If I can fit one, I will, and then get it tightened up. All right, so we got the body bolted down. Couple little weird things here and there that were problems, but nothing too complicated. You might be able to see in here, there's a bolt here, a bolt there, shifters in the way, and there's one back there, and then a series of bolts there. Volkswagen put like a whole lot more bolts in this when they had a Beetle body on one of these chassis. I may add a couple bolts in. This car has been basically like this for its entire life, so I'm sure it's probably fine, but just for peace of mind and just to, you know, kind of get things a little more structurally solid, this bolt and that bolt, there's a big distance in there. None of these bolts are through an original Volkswagen hole. I think when someone built this, they just went along and just drilled a hole straight through and put in a bolt wherever they felt like, regardless of the hole that was pre-existing from Volkswagen. Typically what you would do with a Dune Buggy is you would put the body on and then you would drill up from underneath through the existing Volkswagen holes in the pan, and that's how you would bolt it on. This wasn't done that way. For me to put more bolts in, I'm going to be putting more holes in, because where the Volkswagen holes are is relatively close to a couple of these, and then there's like, say, 2 between some, and you know, you get the idea. They're just not lined up very good aesthetically. So I'm gonna let this sit, let that gasket flatten out in there. But overall, we're in really good shape. This body's on there nice and solid. My next thing that I want to take a look at is Dune Buggies typically will be bolted like that on the chassis, and then that's it. There are 2 threaded holes in the top of the beam here, and then you've got this cross piece of the fiberglass. A lot of the time, and I know it was the case with this car, when you'd hit bumps, you could kind of see the fenders kind of bouncing around a little bit. And when I grab this and move it, this whole centerpiece is actually moving. It's much more rigid than it was before I took the car apart. But I think I want to build a bracket in here that captures these 2 top threaded holes and connects to this center support right here, which the gas tank also sits on here too. So you've got a lot of weight on here when you fill a 10-gallon gas tank up with fuel. So I think if this has a support that comes up and kind of tees this off, you know, creates a square basically, come across and then come into here, I think that would be a good idea to structurally support the gas tank and put more rigidity in the front end of the car. So let me grab some metal and see if we can kind of come up with some kind of a plan for something to connect inside here to stiffen everything up. All right, guys, as I've mentioned, we've got several projects going at once. So you're going to see some wiring here that we haven't talked about yet. That's going to be in a totally separate video, so just kind of ignore it, I guess, for right now. So I've got a piece of metal here. I'm starting on my bracket here to support this front part of the body. This wasn't something that the manufacturer of this kit told you to do, but it is definitely something I wanted to do. As I mentioned earlier, when you'd hit bumps, you could see fenders moving around and things rattle a lot on a fiberglass car. So I'm going to put a bracket that ties this section of the body down into the top of the pan, of the front beam. So I've got a piece of steel here. It's just 1/8-inch steel. It's 20 inches long. I've got holes drilled where my hardware is too big. Let me get a drill bit and we'll fix that. All right, I've opened these holes just up a hair. So the idea here is I'm gonna bolt this underneath, if I can find the hole. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm trying to get some kind of I just want a piece of metal in here that I can weld a bracket up and have something to attach to, is the whole idea of this. There we go. First step, I put the holes in the right place, so that's good. And this, I'm not positive, this is kind of like a working project. I'm figuring out what I'm doing as I'm going. I've got a piece of steel in here now though. These two holes are for the gas tank hold down mounts. I made this piece of metal long enough that I could put extra bolts out here if I wanted to, so that it wasn't necessarily just the hold down bolts holding it. But I actually don't think that that's overall a bad plan, just to attach right here and it'll hold the gas tank and hold the mount and everything. And if it hangs out on the ends a little further underneath here, it's totally fine, doesn't hurt anything. Back here, and I don't know if you can see it, but the top of the front beam has two threaded holes sticking up that stick up pretty high. They stick up because they're supposed to have a rubber bushing in there. When this was a beetle on top, you would have a rubber bushing, a block that goes in there. So I'm trying to figure out now how I want to run something, what I want to weld here that's going to come down and connect to this. And basically just tie this piece that I put into each one of these threaded holes. So I'm going to pull, I found some hardware that fits it, so I'm going to pull that out, get it out of the way. And I've already run a tap through these holes just to clean them up. And I think what I've seen a lot of people and a few friends I've talked to have just kind of run like a piece of Z piece of steel that comes down and, comes, because this hole and this hole are about 2 inches, inch and a half apart from each other. So I need to come back, drop down, and then go back again. Having the piece of steel in here makes it so I can eliminate part of that. And basically I can just kind of put a 90 down here on a piece of steel, come up and weld it to this bracket so that everything's kind of in there. And it ties the two of them together in the center. And I figured it doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot right now, but I figured it would give it some structure right in the center so that this center section having a piece of steel going through, it can't bow and move as much. So that's where I'm at. Let me figure out the next pieces and I will bring you back and show you that. All right, guys, so here's what I come up with. I've got, on these pins that are down here, they're supposed to have a big square bushing. I don't have any, so what I found was old shock mounts, the tops to a shock. The hole was a little small, so I threw some grease into it. And I took a long bolt and I just used the impact to push it down until the rubber expanded enough to blow over the top of it. So now I've got those in there. Let me see if I can, I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of dark. So there's the rubber piece on there and it's on top of the stud on both sides. It really isn't a stud. It's a piece of threaded pipe basically sticking up out of there. So to sit on top of those bushings, I've got two pieces of 1/8 inch bent up. I got a hole in the end that hopefully will go onto this, and I'm going to bolt them on. And the idea here, and I may have to put more of a bend in it too. I may have to adjust that bend now that I've got this kind of figured out. Actually, I want to, let me back this up. I want to use one of these shock washers on top of this to give it a little bit of a cushion so that the whole thing doesn't kind of sink down in there. What size is this? Let's get this thing tightened down. And that's where that's going to sit. So I am going to need to bend my piece of metal a fair amount further. So I'm not touching under here. So it's going to come up, really, you've got to bend about 1/2 inch. All right, so let me take it over to the vise and I will hammer that down some more. I've got my pieces of metal bent here. It's 1/8 inch thick steel plate. I've got it bent in somewhat of an L. It's not a straight 90 degree. It's a little off of that. I bent them, I tried them, I bent them, I tried them, then I made them the same. I've got the washer that goes along with this bushing. So that should sit inside there. We'll get the nut and bolt in here. And everything lines up pretty good. I am going to probably tighten these down somewhat. Make sure they're fairly straight. Okay, and then my plan is I'm going to get underneath and I'm going to tack them on. I'll pull the whole thing off. Hopefully it comes off relatively easily. And then I will finish weld it. I will grind all these corners so there's nothing sharp. But that's the idea of it. That's the whole idea of getting that in there. So let me get set up to weld this. All right, we're tacked on. Let me unbolt that, get it out of there, and we'll finish weld it. So for the rear, for body mounts, the way I'm going to do this is the same way that the original instruction manual tells you to. Originally, this car should have came with a strap that had a hole in it down here, just a piece of, again, 1/8 inch steel probably, and it would go in between the shock and the shock tower, come straight up, have a twist on it so that it sits flat against the body, and then just have a couple of bolts going through. And really it's just to stabilize the body, to kind of hold this whole piece. Because if you think about it, up here where it's connected to the pan, there is nothing connecting all the way out to the end on the overhang of the body. So if you can put something in here to attach these two to each other right here, it's only 1.5 feet out, but it's enough that it should structurally stabilize this and kind of stop it from being able to move around a little bit more and just kind of make everything a little more solid. So here's a picture of the original instruction manual, and you can see basically what I'm talking about, where it's got this twist in here. And that's basically, you know, it should be a relatively simple thing to cut a piece of steel, drill some holes, give it a twist, and mount it to the body. So let's get after it here. And unfortunately, I've got to remove the top shock bolt, which is funny because it's got a smaller head on the bolt than the nut. I'm sure I mean I put the thing in there, so I don't remember that, but that's all right. All right, pull the washers off, and I'm hoping that this whole thing, because it hasn't been on there very long, I'm hoping it kind of comes apart easy and goes back on easy. There we go. And these were, when I did these shocks, I don't know if I talked about the shocks at all, but I did an oil-filled shock. That's why it's not rebounding and popping up here like it would if it was a gas shock. And I did that on purpose because it's such a lightweight car. You don't need a heavy gas like a GR2 KYB or something along the lines of that. You don't need that. You just need an oil-filled shock. And it took some work, believe it or not, to find oil-filled shocks that didn't have gas in them. But that's what we got on here. So, all right, so now I'm gonna go cut a piece of steel, probably, I don't know, 8 inches maybe. What does that look like? Probably 8 inches right up into this. And that'll give us a place to put 2 holes in it, bottom hole with a twist somewhere in the middle. I think that'll probably work, and we'll go from there. So I've got a couple pieces of steel cut. I've got a hole in this one. It's kind of a weird angle, so it's hard to get a light in here, but hopefully you can see well enough that you understand what's happening here. I can put it on the bolt, and I get up to this point, and you can see that obviously this needs to twist in that way, probably, I don't know, 30 degrees or so. So I've made a line down here with an arrow just to remind me that I need to twist the top of it that way. And I think I'm going to try to get the twist as low as I possibly can. And just kind of go from there. I think all of this, I'm probably using thicker steel than what they used from the factory, or what the Dune Buggy company used when they suggested you make this. This is 1/8 inch. I guarantee you they used like a 12 gauge piece of steel, and that's all it was more of a strap. What I'm actually making will probably be a little bit more structural. It's definitely overkill. It doesn't need to be this thick, but it's what I have sitting here is I think this is 1.25 inches. So it's what I used on the front, so I have it readily available. So that's what I'm going to use here too. So let me get this in the vise. We'll give it a twist, and I'll bring you back. Actually, I'll probably drill the upper holes first because it'll be easier to drill it while it's flat. So here's my line. Somewhere in here is where the body begins. So we'll get that so that we can put 2 holes north of that without having to do it while this is all twisted up. All right, guys, here's what I got. I got this piece in. I ended up, instead of going between the shock and the shock mount, I'm thinking it's supposed to be on this side where the bolt is, because everything seems to line up a little easier that way. My piece basically, let me get you out of here. My piece basically looks like a slice of bacon that's had a rough day. So that's it. This will push in just a little bit and go in, but that's gonna give me my 2 mounting holes here. I'm gonna weld nuts on this side of this bracket so that I can just feed a bolt through from the inside, I think. Is that what I wanna do? Let me think about that. I might weld nuts on this side and I might not. It depends on what hardware is gonna go through here, but I'm gonna get the other side all bent up, and then we'll keep moving on, and I'll keep thinking about those bolts. So I got my mount made, my body mount for the front. I ended up welding the nuts on the back side of this plate so that when this goes in, the gas tank is going to come down, and it's just going to go right through these, straight through the holes, thread into this mount. And I figured it kind of works as a ground too, but it ties everything together. It'll tie the gas tank to the body to the frame. I also made the 2 rear ones, same things. I ended up welding the nuts to the back side. I just spray painted them quick. These have a little bit of a texture to it. I'm not sure why, it's just the way it came out. This one's relatively smooth. But I'm just gonna start getting this in here. To get this in, I just gotta go from the front, tip it in. Pretty simple. Get my my washers in place first here. Get the shock washers that go on the top. And then I'm just going to get a lock washer in there. We'll put a, probably not necessary, but I've got a washer right here. I'm going to throw that in too. And if I can show you, I don't know if I can show you this, but you see how much this moves before that's in there. Same thing down. It's underneath it a little bit, so it's stopping it. But you can see how much this moves. And if you move the body, there's movement out here on it. And this is, I mean, the body's nice and solid and it still moves like that. What I'm hoping is this just kind of ties it all together, and it will, well, I know it will because I've already had this mounted in there when I welded it up and everything. All right. All right, that's in there. And then from there, I'll throw these in just for a minute here, just to show you how much it stiffens it up. And obviously it needs washers and whatever it's going to get when the gas tank goes in. But this is just to show you how stiff it makes it. And you can see there's no movement of this whole panel. Out here, very little movement. You get a little bit, but I'm pulling pretty hard. But that's it. That'll stiffen that up. It gives the gas tank a place to sit on. Just kind of stiffens up the whole front of the body. So we'll let me get the rear ones in and I'll show you what those look like. Here's how the back one's gonna go on here. Bolt's gonna go through from this side. Like I mentioned, I'm putting this on the outside, which I think is actually correct. And then I'll get a washer and a nut started on this, going through the shock. Okay, get that hand tight. And then, like I said, I got threaded nuts up here. Or I got welded on nuts up here. So all I got to do on the inside, I've got, let's see, where are you? I've got a bolt with a fender washer, a lock washer, and the nut going through. You could use fancy hardware if you were doing this on, like, you know, depending on what you had for what the rest of the car looked like. This is probably good for me, and I'm probably gonna, when I redo the interior and everything on this car, maybe even get some orange paint on them, or they'll be hidden in a trunk area or under a seat or something anyway. So. All right, with those things locked down, you can see the back of the bolt coming through. That's pretty much it. I just got to tighten up this shock bolt. And if you look at this, before I do that, if I move this body, I have the other side on, so it's already, oh, that's pretty stiff. There is movement in this whole body, and you got to figure the whole back end of this body is overhanging the frame. Yeah, that's all tightened down. I can't show you, but there was a significant amount of movement here. And once this goes in, it really braces it up quick. All right, there we go. And that's it. The whole back end of this thing's much stiffer than it was. So awesome. Thanks for watching.